This is a Swede Speaks.
So today I'm here with Miss Marfa from the Midwest, and I'm very happy to have you here now that
Thank you.
the 4th of July is coming up. So I would like to ask you a few questions about what you think about the 4th of July and the United States and things like that. So the first thing I want to know is why do you celebrate the 4th of July?
Because I'm a patriot, and I was thinking today about what we say. I pledge allegiance to the flag, this of the United States of America,
Yeah,
and to the republic, which includes those of us who are members of, the country. We're citizens, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, with liberty. Okay, that's why I celebrate, and justice for all people who are citizens. That's why I celebrate it.
that's very important. Do you think it's important to celebrate the 4th of July now in our day, in our time?
Oh yes, Thomas Jefferson and Adams and guys like that, I learned when I was a student, said that liberty had to be something that we had to guard against losing. And one of the reasons that they decided to remind us, and they actually decided to set up a date to celebrate the day that they decided that no longer would they live under tyranny. Okay, that's why we call it Independence Day.
Right.
Okay, and so I think I answered what you asked me.
Yeah, that's a very good answer. So, if we look at the United States today, what do you think of the development in America right now? Good things, bad things, and the change from your childhood to today?
That's a good question. I have to think about it. But one of the things that I remember that talks about liberty and justice being a part of what was taught in vigilance. Because one of the things they said is that vigilance, or protection of and being on guard to see that despotism and those who would want to control the people,
Right.
because that's what the Constitution represents. You have to keep vigilant. But I find that they don't teach that as much in school. For instance, on our classroom walls was a picture of George Washington, Jefferson, Adams, and one other guy, I can't remember his name right now. Lincoln.
Oh, yeah, of course.
4 men that were important in our history in terms of liberty. And so that's not in the classroom. I've been a teacher now. I've taught for 25 years. I was a volunteer. And one of the things I saw that gradually it disappeared from the wall along with the Constitution, and that we were taught world history, and particularly Western world history.
Right.
And then we were taught the U.S. history. It's amazing how much of that is missing. When I ask children who go to public schools particularly, they don't seem to know. For instance, I asked a little girl, what do you do for, when you prepare for, let's see, the celebration of George Washington's birthday.
Right.
They get up and they dress up in costumes, but they don't know who he was or where, why it's significant. And I went like,
That's amazing.
yeah. And then I think she told me something else when they were talking about Abraham Lincoln during the month of February,
Yes.
which is when people normally remember the history of people who were enslaved here as Black Americans or African Americans. Then he was one of the men, and she said, "Oh, we just went on with our little hats that we made with those big tops, and Miss Martha, and we put on our mustaches, and we just decided beards,
Right. Yeah.
and they pretended that and that's all." I said, "Well, what did he do?" "I don't know."
That's pretty, that's pretty sad.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just had this conversation this week with a kid. Now, there are some other kids who are homeschooled
Yes.
who know a little bit more.
Yeah.
I mean, they actually have a little bit more information they can give me. But again, some of the things that I was taught about liberty and justice and the need of we the people guarding against the encroachment of our rights,
Right.
those bills of rights, and how we earn them, and that it takes, how can I put it? It takes the willingness to sacrifice.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to tell you something that I did. Okay, you're asking me about how it had changed. I was thinking about why I did what I did when I was a young adult. I was a part of the movement, the civil rights movement. And that's something that my father and his father and my great-grandfather worked for. The rights of African citizens or African American citizens to participate equally.
Right.
With income, with purchases, or whatever we wanted. And so when I was a young adult and I ran into the bigotry and the unspoken laws, you know, they weren't printed anywhere.
No.
But when I ran into that, I decided that I was going to organize with other people. In fact, I started with my oneself with a sit-in.
I see. Okay.
Why? I didn't get up and start shouting at people. We were always taught to be polite, but that we had a right as citizens, that we were citizens.
Yeah.
And my dad even told me about the law. So, yeah, when I think about how life has changed, you know, people today want to get all riled up and violent.
Yeah, and that's something else.
That's very different than having respect for authority and using the law and working towards the cessation of oppression.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like people necessarily getting out in the street and blowing up things. I don't think that's a good way to...
No. No. Speaking of liberty in America, do you think there's a specific reason why the US could adopt the kind of constitution they did?
I think so. I think it speaks for itself. I know that Jefferson and Lincoln and Benjamin Franklin, I did have some quotes, I didn't bring them with me. But one of the things they kept talking about was that this country could not be a country that is free and have liberty without people who recognize that a nation needed to be under God.
Yeah.
And it's now in our pledge, which we again, sometime in the 90s or 80s, something like that, we added to our pledge. And that was important to remind us that, you know, in order for us to maintain what we have or to be able to establish we had to have people of moral.
Yeah.
Okay. We had to have people who realized that God intended man to be free.
Yeah.
And not oppressed.
Right. Okay. Do you think there's something other countries could learn from the United States or from the celebration of your Independence Day?
Yes. To seek vigilantly the cessation of oppression. And it costs.
Of course.
Okay? I can't remember all the things it cost me as a student, but anyway, it costs, but be willing to take. My dad, let me give you an example. My dad wanted to unionize back in the 40s when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And he was one of the few black men that were hired to work in a company where they loaded up trucks with coal.
Okay.
Okay? And the men who were white were given, let's say, $2 an hour.
Okay.
And my dad was given $1
I
for
see.
the same work.
Yeah.
Not half the work, but the same amount of
So he was
effort.
given half the pay.
Right. And he decided that he wanted to organize the workers who were working for $1 an hour into a union. And so he sought the assistance, I think it was the CIO at that time,
Yeah.
industrial laborers.
Yes.
And so they refused. And you know what he had done the day before, the day he decided to make the stand on his job? He came home and talked to us. He said, I want you to understand that I'm going to do something that may cost me something. And he asked each one of his children. Of course, he and my mother had talked ahead of time.
Of course.
Okay. But she didn't say anything. She listened to us. And then they said that, we all said that we believe what you're doing is important. That we believe that it's important to take a chance, and we know that you might stop getting a paycheck, and it might mean that we will have to eat a little less, buy a few less clothes.
Yeah.
And we decided. So that's an example of, the importance
Yeah.
of standing, and it does cost
Yeah.
for liberty.
Well, everything that counts in life costs something.
And eventually they did get organized, but
Yeah.
not through him.
Okay. Okay. So before we end, is there anything else you would like to add?
No, I just hope that we continue as a nation under God, number one, and number two, that we hold dearly, okay, all the things, and remember what our founding fathers did and those who came after him, and mothers, founding people,
Yeah.
to just guarantee that we have the rights that we sometimes take for granted.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much for coming.
I enjoyed doing this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless you, and
Yes.
and happy 4th of July.